You're listening to Estrogen Dropouts.
Hey, welcome back to Estrogen Dropouts. I'm one of your hosts, Erin.
And I'm Elizabeth, and today we will be talking about marriage in midlife. Now, if you are not married but you have a longtime partner, this will, of course, apply to you as well. But we're talking about how marriages have lots of ebbs and flows, and so there's different seasons. And coming back together in midlife, it can often fall apart, or you can rediscover and find a new path. Erin's got some great stats on this.
Yeah, so several years ago, I did a lot of research on gray divorce, and that's what they kind of call it, which I thought was an interesting way to put it. But that divorce rates overall have been declining in the past decades. Also, marriage rates have been declining. So that could be like they could be correlating together in the decline in marriage, the decline in divorce. But divorce rates for those over 50 doubled since 1990. And one out of every four divorces in the year 2019 was individuals over 50. So definitely speaking to our demographic, that midlife, person that maybe has been married for a while. I know that I will have been married 35 years in December, over our years of marriage. Like you said, I always say marriage is kind of like a roller coaster ride. Sometimes you are right up there in the heights and everything is a beautiful view and everything is going great. And then you just end up, down and sometimes it's terrifying too when you go down that slide and then you end up at the bottom and, it's like, it's never just a flat terrain, I don't think. Do you think? You've been married. How long have you and Chris been married?
26 years. And
Okay.
we almost really got divorced two different times during that period. One early in our marriage, we almost did when we'd only been married a couple of years. And then the second time was in 2020. And that's when we came really close. And I think partly being in midlife has something to do with that. And I'm not sure if my hormones played a role, but I think life experiences definitely did. Because that was 5 years ago. So I'm 49. So I was 44 at the time. I was in perimenopause, but I don't know. I think I just like after years that, I think that they like led us to believe that a lot of times marriage falls apart in our 50s because that's whenever all the kids are out of the house typically. And so it's like people have been holding on for their kids to be grown and then they leave. I don't know that that was the case. I feel like, I mean, probably, but I mean, I also think maybe hormones come into play with that, with a lack of estrogen. We have, like you were saying, less compassion. So we're kind of like enough shit, and we're just kind of done.
We're done.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's like basically what happened. So I think Chris has always had a very stressful career. He was essential. He wasn't like home during COVID. His office runs 365, 24 hours a day. He has like TDYs. It is very much military-esque and a military feel to it. And so he was active duty and then now he's civilian. When he was home, he wasn't fully present with us a lot of the time because of his stressful career. And so he was a great provider. There was a lot of things there were more things that I loved than things that I didn't, which is why we've been together for so long. The only thing that I was lacking that I felt like I was lacking. And he has his own list of things. I'm just going to speak for myself.
Of course.
But the only thing I was lacking was connection because he had such a stressful job. And when he would come home, he was just still stressed out from work. And so he worked evenings and weekends. And so he wasn't present for a lot of the activities that we would do as family. So I felt like a single mom a lot of times, just emotionally, not totally though, because I didn't have to work. I didn't have to, like, he was a great provider. I respect him. I admire him. He's brilliant. Like, I do enjoy his company. I felt like we were living separately and we would just come together to exchange information about the kids, but there was no great, deep connection. There was a deep physical attraction. We've always had that physical attraction for each other, and then deep admiration and respect for who he is as an individual. And I think he felt the same way about me, but we just struggled to connect. And so in 2020, I was just like, I'm done with this. The kids are older. Bonnie was still in high school, but I was like, I need a partner. Like I need someone that is more present. And so then we both decided to like really work hard at it. And he wanted to save the marriage. Obviously, he didn't want a divorce, and so we just started planning dates. Like we made a shared note in our phone. We thought about like what do we both enjoy doing together, and that was eating. We like good food, and so we started putting a list of all like local mom and pop restaurants or like and bougie restaurants and out of the way that are a couple hours away. And so on once a week we would choose a restaurant off of our list and we would go and experience, and we'd do like the whole tasting menu. And so we started to really have fun together doing that. And it was really awkward in the beginning because we had a rule like you can't talk about kids. And we were just trying to connect, and we really were like it was awkward. It
What
was
do we talk about if we don't talk
yeah.
about kids? Yeah.
But I knew like the things I don't like about him are some of the qualities that my son and one of my daughters have. And so I'm like, if I can appreciate those things in them and if I can love them through it, then I should be able to love my husband through it because they are this very similar in that sense. Anyway, and I'm glad. So now here we are 5 years later after working hard at it. We are closer than we've ever been. And I can say he is my absolute true best friend. And this was after I was literally gutted in 2020 thinking I was getting a divorce. I really was. It was a super painful time. I thought I was going to get a divorce. And he's my ride or die. And we are super close. And I would say he also thinks, I know for sure he would say I'm his best friend as well. And he confides in me and we're super close. So when things go bad, don't think that you can't bring them back around. You absolutely.
So I want to say a couple things I think about why it happens in this stage of life for so many of us, the gray divorce, if you will. One, I think, is that, we're the sandwich generation. So we're caring still for teenagers or young adults, and we're caring for parents. So there's all the stress. There's the physical and hormonal changes that are happening, not just for women, but also for men, right? They start to lose testosterone. So maybe they aren't, as amorous as they were. And if you've had a husband that's always just been, super physical, and then all of a sudden they aren't, then you're like, what's wrong? Is it me? Like what's going on? And then also women with declining hormones that sometimes we aren't, it's not like when you're first married to somebody and you just can't get enough of them and you just are like, I need you right now. You're after you've been married for 30 years or 20 years, you're not like, take me right now, right here. I don't care. Right. Sometimes it takes a little planning, like,
Yeah.
okay. And the other thing I think is that there is just a lot of maybe reflecting on our identity, because like in your case and in my case, both, we've primarily been the children's caretaker. And as our kids have gotten older and we've kind of lost that identity, then coupled with the changing hormones, we're like, who are we? And then we have this spouse who has been a great provider, but maybe isn't as emotionally invested. And you said, y'all went through that in 2020, and Jeff and I, we've had a pretty steady run for 35 years. We were separated earlier in marriage, like year 7. And then again, we were separated in 2022 for a brief period of time. I moved out.
So I never moved out. So you were like, I mean, you're like, I feel like you're like, oh, it's not a big deal. It was fine. We've had a steady marriage, but I moved out.
But it wasn't like an anger thing. It wasn't like, I'm sick of your shit, I'm moving out.
I
It was more
remember
like,
when
I
you went
need
through.
time. Like, I felt like I couldn't really figure out what was going on with me. And in retrospect, it was not Jeff. I mean, it wasn't like, he's a great husband. Just like you say all about the qualities about Chris, Jeff is like the most amazing person. He's definitely one of my top 4 favorite people, and because my kids take up some of those slots too. He's always just been my rock. So a lot of it had to do more with me. It was a lot of trying to figure out.
So I'll tell the story because you literally woke
Okay,
up
so
one day.
we basically, yeah. So I just kind of was like, we also weren't as connected. And at the time, I think because of where my hormones were and just the changes, the thought of actually I didn't have the emotional bandwidth to even address the disconnect. Like, I didn't even feel like I could, like, every time I think about it, I would just be like, oh, it's too exhausting. Like, I can't even like put forth the effort, you know? And this is an interesting observation that I've made is that a lot of times when a marriage falls apart, if it's the man who instigates it, it's usually because he has somebody else lined up. Not always, but I've just seen a lot of friends who have gone through divorce, and men oftentimes divorce for another person. Women, typically it's because we feel disconnected and women don't usually, I mean, there are exceptions, but we don't leave our spouse for another man.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people that do it, or even for another woman, or just for another relationship. It's more about, in both times for Jeff and I, it was never about anyone else. It wasn't like, oh, I want to date or like, I want to see what's out there. It was like, I just can't continue. And the easiest way I knew how was just to say, hey, I'm going to move out. And he was like, what? And anyways, I rented a little apartment. I know, God love him. But he was so, he didn't pressure me. He just said, do what you need to do. I mean, and all that to say was the day that I moved out and he helped me move into a little apartment that I moved into, then it was like it all came forward in everything, every little resentment that I.
Really before that though, because you've told me like before that you said you woke up one day and you just looked around this big house and like everything and your kids were going, you were like, I'm done taking care. Like that was the feeling you were like, I'm
Well,
done.
that was part of it, was like, I'm done taking care of people. And I've always been the caretaker. And again, I do think it was hormones because, I mean, Jeff has always been like, I haven't had to ever work since I had my second child. He provides a very good, comfortable living for us. He's so wonderful in so many ways. So it's not like I'm like taking care of him. I mean, I'm not like, but it was more of a mindset shift. It was more of like in my mind, I was just like, I needed to live alone. I went straight from my parents' house to being married. I didn't live on my own. I was in college and I spent almost 3 months in a little apartment that was the size of a shoebox. So literally I could clean it in about 2 minutes. It was a very little tiny studio apartment. And it was just what I needed because it's like I didn't even have to take care of that. And I would like get up in the morning and have my little breakfast. And then a lot of times I would, grab something for lunch and then I wouldn't eat dinner. So I wasn't cooking. I wasn't having to think a lot about needs. It was all very easy. And we did see each other a couple times a week. We had date nights where we would go out to eat. We stayed physically apart just because I didn't want it to like mess with my head.
I know because we were in Italy and you would call him every night. And I'm like,
yes, and we were separated.
and then you were like, oh, and then we fly in Saturday, and you're like, and Jeff's gonna pick me up at the airport. And we're gonna go to dinner. I'm like, Erin, you were separated.
It wasn't like an anchor thing. It was more like I gotta figure out what is going on in my brain. Like why? Because there wasn't anything wrong with him, so I knew it wasn't him. It was a me thing. But I did that day that I moved into my apartment. I mean, for 6 hours I cried. And if you know me in real life, I'm not a crier, but I cried and just told him every little tiny little thing, that like I had built up as resentment that I didn't even know I had to him. And it wasn't for anything big. I mean, it was just
all the little things that had
little tiny, it's death by 1,000 paper, right? It's like, it's never any, obviously if your partner, if there's infidelity or, domestic violence, that's a big thing that's going to like, jar your whole world and give you just cause for like, ending the relationship. But oftentimes I think for people, it's more of like a very slow death. When my kids were littler and they were all at home, every summer, well, not every summer, but quite a few summers, they would go to my mom's for the week and we wouldn't go anywhere. We would actually stay at home. We had like a staycation. And then I'd be like, oh yeah, I do like him. Like he's so awesome. He's funny. He's just all these great things. But when you're in the thick of everything of raising kids, he was growing in his career. And then there's a little bit of resentment from that because then, I've given up my career to be the stay-at-home mom. And then, hey, guess what? My kids grow up and leave home. And then I'm just looking around like, what am I going to do now? So, but that's my biggest piece of advice is, like just opening up the lines of communication, because once I did that, once I told him everything and I just cried and cried and cried and cried. I mean, I literally cried. And I will say this, I mean, it wasn't a walk in the park for me being gone for 3 months. I cried every single day at some point when I had moved out. I cried every single day. Just this overwhelming sadness. Like I knew I didn't want to be divorced, and I always would tell him too, like I didn't want a divorce, but I also said, you have a say in this too. Like I can't just ask you, I'm like, hopefully after 33 years, you're going to give me a little bit of grace and let me have a little bit of time to figure out my shit. But I wasn't telling him like, I expect you to sit around and wait around on me. It was more like, I would really like to have this time. And of course, he, was like, take all the time you need. And it didn't take long. We kept the lines of communication open. Like I said, we dated. I never publicized that we were separated. I mean, you knew because we went to Italy, but I didn't share it with a lot of people. And I've had two friends who I told, who are good friends, who are like, how did you do that? They were like amazed, like I was so brave or something. And then one of those friends,
I mean, it is brave. You literally moved out and left after 30 years. I mean, that's brave. That is brave.
yeah, I mean, I wasn't moving out to like party.
Yeah,
I was
but still, I mean, you were putting yourself first. That's basically what you were
Yeah.
doing.
So that's another point I want to make is that, if you are someone who is feeling this way, like Elizabeth and I are saying, where you're just so disconnected, and if you say to your spouse, hey, I am feeling so disconnected from you, if you just start the communication, even though it's very hard to start it, and it may feel so overwhelming, and it may just be like, just feel like you can't do it because you don't have the emotional bandwidth. If you're spouse does not, like you said, Chris was like, I want to save our marriage. Jeff was like, I want to save our marriage. I have several friends who, the husband was willing to just kind of limp along because he didn't want to upset the apple cart. And one of my good friends, she would say, I can't continue this way. And he would basically not acknowledge what she was saying. She'd say, hey, can you turn the TV off so we can talk? He'd turn it off. And then he would not say, yes, I want to work on our marriage, or yes, I want to do this or whatever. They are divorced. And so sometimes it's the litmus test, right? If the person that you say it to doesn't say, I've been feeling the same way, or, hey, I don't want you to feel that way. So let's try to figure out how we can come back together. That's enough for you to know, like, do I want to keep pouring into this relationship, marriage, and not be getting something back? I mean, marriage isn't always 50-50. Sometimes it's 60-40. Sometimes one person has to give more.
I think, like, too, what I've seen is that because I just was talking to Chris, we were kind of like reliving all of this last night because I told him I was going on the podcast today and I was going to share that with everybody. And he's like, sometimes you just have to agree to disagree, or like not to agree to disagree. Sometimes you just have to realize like you aren't going to see things the same way. You're just not, because of your own different experiences. And so it's like, if I'm saying like, I feel like we aren't connecting, and he's like, I'm talking to you, like I'm sitting here saying, do you need anything from me? Like what? And I'm like, yeah, but you can feel that connection when it's there and when it's not. But he wasn't getting that. It's like it was harder for him because he doesn't need the deep emotional connection. I think now maybe he does, now that we have it. But like back then, he was just so busy and just.
Well, he was happy. I mean, he was okay with just the status quo.
He was fine with the way things were. So he felt like it came out of nowhere, even though I was like, no, I've been saying for years like that I'm lonely, that we don't connect on a deeper level. He was like, so anyway, when we were talking about it last night and kind of like rehashing everything, I just realized like there comes a point, like there's no sense in beating a dead horse, that saying. It's like you shit or get off the pot. You just got to move forward. Mm-hmm. So you both at one point, it's like rehashing it over and over again, or the difference of opinions. It won't move you necessarily through it. Sometimes you need to do it to say it, to get it off your chest. But really, you've got to take different deliberate actions to build the relationship. And so we did that by spending quality time. We started with something very neutral, like trying new food and new restaurants. And then that turned into, for us, like we would, after dinner at home, we would go for a walk together every night, like after dinner walk. That was our thing. And then we started sitting by the fire pit together. And then, then it just starts slowly growing as our comfort level and our connection got deeper. But we had to do things. We had to do uncomfortable things. And
Right.
connecting when you're mad at someone is uncomfortable.
Right. Well, and one thing I've heard over and over when I had moved out from the couple people that knew about my situation is they said, marriage is hard, divorce is hard. So
Yeah.
pick your heart. And I knew that I did not want a divorce. I mean, it was not even like something I ever was on my radar. It was more just I needed to get to the bottom of what was going on in my own head. And then it forced us to do that reconnecting. And we've created a lot of, things together that we do together. We've always done a lot together, but one of the things that we really changed was on our intimacy, not sex, but as I created, I'm going to patent it, Snuggle Sunday. Have I told you about
Yes,
it?
you did.
Okay. So Sundays, we because now we don't have any kids at home. And granted, you think like, oh, when you don't have kids in your home, you can have sex at any time. But there's still life, right? It wasn't about sex. It was more about just connection, like physical connection, because we can both be going in our own directions all the time. And so we just spend time in bed in the morning. When we wake up on Sundays, he has to let the dog out. We both brush our teeth and we just like lay in the bed and snuggle. I mean, and at first it was awkward, and there are occasions where it doesn't happen, like if we have something that we have to be at, but, because sometimes you can have sex and it doesn't have to be intimate.
Yeah.
It could just be more physical. It's just like, get the act over with. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. But this is like full on, like, skin to skin contact. We don't even sometimes talk. It's just like, snuggling. And that has helped so much.
I can see how that would be helpful.
Yeah, well, you're not a big
I'm
cuddler.
a cuddler. Chris would be all over that. I am not a touchy person.
Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily have to lead to sex. I've had so many people reach out to me, good friends that found out. And two of my other friends who are really private about their marriages shared with me that like she just said, like when you said that about being lonely, she was like, I was so lonely. She also raised 3 kids, and you find yourself, because you've invested so much time in your kids and you've made them your priority, that then when they start to grow up and they're gone, even if you have girlfriends, it's still just like it can be very lonely in your house, and your husband's got his job and you've been running the house, and she just said, to her husband, like, I'm lonely. I feel like we aren't, connecting. And so it's so much more rampant, I think, than people even want to talk about, because nobody wants to like admit, like, hey, we're having problems in our marriage.
Yeah,
or,
it's like something we don't talk about with our friends, but I think we should. It's really important to acknowledge it, and to our children, like that marriage is hard.
Yes.
Like it's not.
Well, I told all of my kids, and I'll never forget. So my oldest he was like very supportive. So is my youngest, and my middle one, he said, why? And I said, it's none of your business. I mean, because I said, there's nothing, like, it's not a particular reason. I said, it's just our relationship. And we've always managed to, it's not, I mean, my kids know, they've seen us work through, situations. Like Garrett always says, my oldest, he can only remember us ever having like 3 fights, like 3 big fights.
Yeah, Chris and I don't fight, and when we disagree, it's always in private. And I often wonder about that. That's why I'm like, because I've heard one of my kids say, oh, like, I just need to find a marriage like y'all's. And I'm like, okay, I hope I didn't set you up for failure. Like, just because you didn't witness us fighting doesn't mean that there haven't been a lot of those uncomfortable times.
Right. In conversations and disagreements. We disagree in front of our kids. Like, I mean, it's like, we really don't fight. I mean, I think your kids will not have an unrealistic notion of marriage. They know that y'all have had to work through issues.
And
but
I think it's important to acknowledge too that like we both have very good relationships or great relationships with our husbands. And even when times were hard, they were not bad husbands. They were great husbands. And so it was just, we were disconnected from them for a time, because I don't want anyone to like misunderstand. Like if you're in a shitty situation, absolutely, sister, get a divorce.
Cut ties.
Life is too short. If we got a drinking problem, if we're gambling away all the money in the house and you can't pay your mortgage, or if there's anything out of control going on, and if you're tired of dealing with it, or if they're not willing to work on it for you. No, I mean, like if any of those things were happening to it, umpteenth degree in my marriage, I wouldn't be here right now.
Right. I'm in a lot of midlife groups. And one of the things I do think, though, is that, again, it's the by a thousand paper cuts. It's like when you aren't connected, then every little thing that they do
Yes.
bugs the crap out of you.
Yes. It's all
It's
about,
like it doesn't matter. They could be just breathing, and you're like, do you have to breathe so loud? I mean, so I think that when you do have that connection, you learn to like all that other little nitty gritty stuff just kind of gets smoothed over. I heard this great analogy about marriage, and it's called like the artichoke theory. And if you've ever eaten an artichoke, you know that when you pull off, the leaves, they have the little kind of hairy, like prickly things. And you have to pull all of those off to get to the heart. So the first person whoever ate an artichoke, how in the world would you have ever thought to eat an artichoke? It looks so daunting on the outside. And that is, I think, oftentimes, how I felt. It was just like, oh my gosh, it's this artichoke. It's going to have me having to pull back, pull back, pull back, pull back, pull back. But when I finally did it, you get to the heart and it's just so tender and sweet. And it's so much better than you could have ever imagined. So it's like, there's, lots of sayings like no grit, no pearl,
but it's true.
Yeah. Some of the best things in life are things that are the hardest, that you work the hardest for. And so I think if you make that time to reconnect, like find a common interest. I mean, a lot of people are like, I heard somebody say, they were talking and they were like, well, we have nothing in common anymore.
I mean, I didn't think we had anything in common. That's why we did food. And then we had to spice it up instead of just like, we're not going to Outback, So we were like, okay, let's search all the mom and pop owned, no chain restaurants, off the beaten path in small little towns. Like we were really stretching it, trying to make it more unique. But like if you're a beer person, you could do like craft beers, or if you're a winery person, you could go to
or if you like to thrift, you could thrift together and like flip some dresser or read the same book at the same time and then talk about that, because your spouse's perspective or your partner's perspective on the book is going to be completely different than yours, because again, we come to things through our lens of our experience. I know you and Chris and your son listen to the same podcast and y'all talk about that. So there are ways that you can have things in common. It's like you're both human.
Yeah,
so
you just have to do some digging to find it. And I think if you are struggling or unhappy in your marriage, you've got to sit him down and you've got to be honest and say, hey, part of this is it could be for, because they're probably thinking it anyway, right? When we get to our 50s, I think that they're just assuming that. I've seen so many different things, especially with the We Do Not Care movement out now. I see husbands on TikTok all the time. Hey, if your wife's a part of the We Do Not Care movement, you got to tiptoe around things and all that stuff, So I think if you sit down and you say, yeah, I'm losing estrogen and that does make me have a little less compassion, but that's true. But also everything I'm feeling is true. And it's just I've been stuffing it for so long. And here's the truth, that I'm not filtering myself anymore, but I feel like I'm undervalued, or I feel like we haven't connected. I feel like you expect me to do all these things around the house or whatever it is. And I do not want to spend any more of my life like this. So things are going to change here. And I hope that you can give me grace while they change. I hope you, just prepare them, tell them what is coming, tell them, but speak up and do it. I feel like life is too short for us to just sit there and try to stuff it, because then it's held in our body, that pain and that resentment. And we'll have to do a whole different podcast on this, but feelings, people often think you can talk your way out of your feelings, and you can't. That's why they're called feelings. You have to feel them. So you have to cry, you have to feel the anger, you have to actually do an activity to get it out. You can't just sit there. So that's why talk therapy, it works in one sense, like if you need to learn to voice yourself and to speak up for yourself, but to heal from something and to move forward, you have to do activity and be active through it.
Yes. As a yoga therapist, I would definitely say that. And, knowing about somatic work, that, feelings are just like anything else. We think because they're ethereal and they aren't, I say it's like, it's just like any other thing that you take into your into your body. If you ingest something, it has to be metabolized and move through your body. Feelings are the same way. Just because they're not tangible, that you can't touch them, it's still a valid form of like energy and effect on your body. And it has to be metabolized, and you metabolize it by moving through it. You can't just say, well, I can't, feel that sadness right now because I've got too much to do, or anger is not an emotion that is acceptable in your, maybe the way you were. But yeah, we definitely should do a whole episode on feelings.
And if you're angry and you're resentful, I heard when I was on my retreat in Mexico, I learned take a pillow or a pool noodle and beat the tar out of your bed and yell until you are physically just exhausted and drained of energy. Do it every day for 30 days, and that anger will likely leave your body. And I was like, what if I'm not feeling angry in the moment? And she's like, it doesn't matter. Do it every single day. And I said, well, how do I know when I stop? And she's like, when you are physically exhausted and you can't do it anymore. And like, I know I struggled with, because I'm not a yeller, so I struggled with yelling. And so she's like, for you, it's going to start off like, like even that's uncomfortable for me to project. Like,
yeah.
And she's like, so when you're hitting your bed with a pool noodle or with a pillow, and you do that. And then she's like, hopefully someday you'll be able to fully express that rage.
Right.
Like, we all have it in us. And then it comes out in ways of like autoimmune disease, migraines, like overeating, and like holding on to fat in our fat storage. Like, we're wearing it on the outside, but it's all about feelings on the inside.
Yeah. Were you ever able to scream?
I always kept putting it off. No, I was not. I was always kept putting it off until there was absolutely nobody in the house. And then I was like, well, there's the pets in the house. It's like there was always an excuse. Like, I was like, what is Bella going to think? My dog. I'm like, what is Bella going to think if I'm up here screaming? Like, she's going to be like,
Bella's going to be like, you go, girl.
I'm like, Bella's all worked up, running around, like thinking something is happening. So I didn't ever complete it, but I would like to. And I do believe that it works
It would probably be very freeing.
Yeah.
I grew up in a yelling household, so yelling is not a problem for me. I mean, I don't scream, on the
Right.
regular, but being like vocal, I've always been told to like tone it down.
Well, I mean, I can like raise my voice when I get heated, not like loud, but like more louder than I
I've
need.
never seen you heated.
I know, but Chris is very uncomfortable with it.
You're very even.
Yeah, usually, and like if I get upset, I mean, Chris is probably the only person that will hear it, and it's never like I'm never yelling, but I'll raise my tone a little bit. But usually something crazy will be going on, and I'm just like, I like freeze. I freeze. It's like flight or freeze. I freeze. I'm a freezer.
Yeah. Yeah. We all have our response
Yeah.
to big trauma, little trauma. So, well, is there anything else you would add to today's episode? Like, I would say, if you're trying to make headway and maybe the two of you can't come to some type of solution together, it's fine to seek professional help. Go to a family marriage counselor who can teach you ways of communicating better.
Yeah. And I'm definitely for marriage, and I'm also for divorce. I'm for whatever makes the person happier, but just keep in mind that I think divorce doesn't mean you're free of that person if you have children, because even if they're adults, you're still sharing holidays in the future. You're just sharing it even more ways, like, because you've got in-laws in the picture now, and you've got like, you're never going to be rid of that person. So I always think if there's a way to fix it and to solve it, because you're never fully going to be rid of that person if you have kids.
Even sometimes when you don't have kids with somebody, if you've been married for a long time, there's like a psychic imprint on each other that you don't ever fully like rid yourself of. I mean, I think that, so leave no stone unturned to try to figure out if you can either heal the relationship and move forward together, or if you are going for a dissolution of the partnership or marriage, is, you want to make sure that you have that's the only option.
And also think about like this, if you're thinking, because I know as I've been changing with my hormones the past few years, there's been times when I'm like, oh, Chris isn't going to like this about me, that I'm not going to be this agreeable, or I'm not going to do this or whatever. But then if you just think they're going to have to get to know someone. They're going to get to know a new person, or they're going to get to
Mhm.
know the new you. Either way, they're going to be getting to know someone new. So give them the opportunity to see the person that you're becoming as you step into this new journey of who you are.
Yeah.
And let them decide once they truly see you, when they can see you like without the resentment and anger, and you're just like living on your terms. Yes. But because I know a lot of women are going through that right now, where they don't want to be there for somebody else and do everything and wait on somebody constantly, and they just want to put themselves first. So try staying, putting yourself first, but talk to them about it first, so it's not like they're not blindsided, and then see how it goes.
Yeah, good advice. So each episode, we're going to end with a hot topic or a hot take. Elizabeth's going to present a little situation to me, and I'm going to give my take on it because I don't do TikTok and I don't do a lot of social media, so I don't know all the trends.
Okay, so this week, it has been trending young teachers that dress. All these teachers have these TikTok accounts, and they're sharing their outfits for their first day of school outfits. And a lot of them are wearing short dresses or like low cut tops and stuff. And so that's trending, that parents are all getting very upset about it. And then just the outfits of these teachers. I don't know. So I don't feel like this was an issue when we had our kids growing up. That I don't recall ever remembering what the teacher was.
So I do have thoughts about that. And I know that we, want to teach boys, as a mother of boys, that just because somebody's dressed in a certain way, it doesn't, control your urges and your actions. But I personally think that, as someone, that when you do dress in revealing clothes, that you are putting yourself out there for a lot of attention. I'm not necessarily saying that you are doing it for that reason, but it does. It's just the way our society is. And men are very visual, and they get very aroused visually. Women, we're rarely like, oh, look at that fine. We might be like, oh, he's very handsome, or,
Right.
but we're just
not
a
like,
little
oh,
bit
let me
more
check it out.
nuanced. Yeah, a lot of our attraction starts in the brain, not necessarily like in like our nether regions. It's more of a mental turn on. So, they've already got girls that are probably dressing in really short shorts and that kind of thing, or maybe like little tight little tops. But for the teacher, I absolutely feel like it should be professional dress. And most schools that my kids went to had dress codes for teachers. You couldn't wear things that were revealing. So I'm interested to know what if the school doesn't have a dress code and the
I know. I
teachers are
think it's
allowed.
interesting. I've seen some like parents talking about their teacher was like in leggings and a crop top, like bra top, like an athletic, like they're going to the gym, and then being like, how is that okay? I mean, we're talking elementary school. Like, how is that okay? And that definitely seems too casual. Love. I somehow made it on the fun clothing. So I see all the elementary school teachers that dress all funky with all the different colors and like the fun patterns and big flowers and stuff, like just so the kids think that they look fun and that are more unique looking. Yeah, I don't ever recall. I think that where my kids, I'm sure there must have always been a dress code, because it was never an issue. I'd never heard anything
You never
about.
saw anyone in like a mini skirt
Yeah,
with a
no,
crop top on,
and
teacher.
no, never.
Well, our schools had dress codes even for all students. So
Yeah,
it wasn't just
same.
girls, it was girls and boys. It was like certain things, no, no sweatpants,
Yeah, and I mean, I think
no.
like as a teacher, if you wear a dress or a short dress or a short skirt, you should have to wear shorts under it. I mean, I would think that would
Yeah.
be, I do now if I wear like a short sundress that's like a wide flowy, I'm afraid like, what if a wind came by? So I wear like the little boy shorts underneath.
Yeah, little bloomers.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder what were most people saying?
they're appalled just by the teachers that were,
Okay.
yeah, they're
So,
upset.
I just think as a person and a person that has a position of authority, you should be promoting a professional appearance.
Yes, I agree.
And that doesn't mean you have to wear makeup. You can wear your hair pulled back in a bun. You can wear no makeup. I mean, I'm not saying that you have to dress even feminine. I
Yeah.
mean,
It should just be like lengths, like to be
yes.
like, I don't know what they
Yeah,
do with the
to the
kids.
knee,
Yeah, like
to the knee,
you
to
stand
the
up, your shirt's slightly shorter than
collarbones.
a no, like, well, then there's the whole thing with no cleavage. You can't really say no cleavage
No,
because,
but you could say you have to have your shirt to your collarbones
okay,
or
yeah, you could
something.
say that.
Because then it would, I guess if you were so,
Yeah.
blessed and endowed with like
Right, but
watermelon.
if you had to wear a crew neck,
Yeah.
like no V-necks.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that, and especially in high school, I mean, those boys they're getting inundated with hormones,
Yeah.
and it's just like, and you want them to be able to concentrate to the best of their ability. And girls also are getting inundated with hormones. And I wouldn't want any, male gym teacher wearing, a sleeveless shirt with little tiny, boy shorts.
That
I
they say.
mean, girls might be like, oh, that's gross,
Yeah.
but
They'd be like, he's so cringe. But it's
exactly. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's episode. If you haven't already, make sure that you hit the follow button so that you can stay in the loop whenever we drop a new episode.
Yep. We are on TikTok, Instagram, and you can even watch our full episode video recordings on YouTube under the handle Estrogen Dropouts.
Yep. So we see you next week.
All right, bye.
Bye.
This has been a production of Estrogen Dropouts, LLC.